In this video, I'll tell you about the good old days of wargaming, and whether they were actually all that good. A few weeks ago, I made a video called My 3 Wargaming Wishes for Rules and Hobby, in which I talked about my wishes for the future of wargaming. I also mentioned in that video that I would enjoy for people to post in the video comments with their wargaming wishes, and I also asked for video topic suggestions in the comments as well. I've been going through those topic suggestions, and here's one that, frankly, kind of struck a chord with me. It may not have been the suggestion that the commenter intended, but it still made me think a lot. That's usually good. The commenter, named Sour Wurmple, asked, "What are 3 examples you have for the good old days in tabletop gaming? What made them a golden era, and how would we bring that essence into current day?" This comment almost immediately brought up several different ideas and questions in my head upon reading it, and I knew I wanted to talk about it. So thanks to Sour Wurmple for the question and jumping off point for this video. It's a very interesting and possibly contentious topic idea. Right off the get, my first question is this: were the good old days really that good? Like, the good old days is a term that gets thrown around a lot, but it's a very personal and rose-colored view of what used to be. And for most, it's a very selective and biased walk down memory lane. And as this video relates specifically to, just wargaming, we won't go super deep into socio-psychological studies, as I'm neither a sociologist nor a psychologist. But I am old, so I can probably talk a little bit about the good old days. I generally find that at its core, the concept of the good old days mostly comes from the age you were when you formed these memories. When you're a kid, for the most part, things seem kind of great. You don't have a job or big responsibilities. And as you look back on those days now, the rose-colored glasses can certainly end up being deployed, especially since now, like as an adult, you usually have a job and responsibilities, and things don't seem as easy as when you were a kid and your parents took care of a lot of stuff for you. In wargaming, this shows up frequently as nostalgia for when you were a kid and had tons of free time, and you could spend long, lazy Saturdays playing epic wargame sessions with your friends. Like an 8-hour wargame? Sure, no problem. We probably weren't really going to be doing much else today anyway. Weird, random proxied models to take the place of the miniatures that we don't own? Again, yeah, we have lots of imagination. It's fine. No fancy table or terrain to play on? Still, again, no problem at all. We'll play on the basement floor with whatever we've got. But those things were all about how we felt about wargames back in the day when we were younger. But does that really mean that the actual games themselves were truly better? The original question from the commenter referred to wargames back in the day as being part of a golden era. But were the 1980s or 1990s the golden era of wargaming? Really? Or was it just those rose-colored glasses from our younger, more carefree days that made that era seem golden? Personally, I think it's the latter. Let's start by looking at the models. I think it's hard to say that miniatures made in the 1980s and even 1990s are better than the models of today. Now, sure, you might like them better, right? Like you maybe have a love for the old kind of squishy details of hand-sculpted metal miniatures, right? You may have a preference for the old look of minis back then, but it's hard to deny that today's miniatures are more consistent in scale and form. The details are cleaner, there's more symmetry to the sculpts, the parts fit together better, and so on. New technologies have really helped the models of today. Some people will say that newer miniatures don't have the same kind of character, as old miniatures, that today's miniatures might be too sterile, for lack of a better word. Again, that's probably a good bit of personal nostalgia coming to the forefront. For every old miniature with character you put forward as an example, I can probably find a recently made model with just as much character in the sculpt, unless by character you mean the inability to identify whether this is a pouch on his belt, or is it like a fold in the fabric of his shirt, or is it a mistake in casting altogether? And let's be honest, many of the models that we're thinking about here in this thought experiment are old GW models compared to new GW models. I'll admit, some new Games Workshop models do have a bit less of that kind of wacky character that their old models used to. I mean, really, who builds a plasma gun out of wood, right? But as I say all the time, Games Workshop isn't all of tabletop wargaming. There's tons and tons of models from other companies out there that very possibly will have the character that you're looking for. If you want, weird and interesting, all you have to do is look at small indie wargaming companies and see the things that they're making today. Some of those companies are still making miniatures in the old ways as well, hand sculpted and then produced via spin casting in metal. Those types of models are still prevalent out there online. You just won't be seeing them on the Games Workshop website like, back in the day. Those models will instead be found in all kinds of places like Bad Squiddo Games and Ral Partha and Dark Sword Miniatures and Die Hard Miniatures and many others. And then, of course, there's also 3D printing if you want odd and wonderful miniatures from indie creators, really. In 3D printing, sculptors can take all kinds of risks with what they make because they're basically just designing it. That's the time that they're taking and the money they're spending. It's just to design the thing. They don't have to manufacture it, and the money involved with that, and warehouse it, and the money involved with that, and ship it all over the world, and the money involved with that. They just upload it, and that's it. So if it's not something like normal or popular, that's okay, because the audience doesn't need to be the big, normal, and popular audience. If you want something that looks truly old school, but is still a 3D printable STL file, my favorite is Knucklebones Miniatures. Check them out. So if anything, there's way more models out there these days that look and act a lot like the models that you remember from back then. They're just not from any of the big names. Remember, those big names of today weren't big back in the 80s and 90s. They were the size and scope of many of our smaller indie producers today. These types of models can definitely have the essence of what the original commenter referred to as the golden era of the old days, except now you can find them easily online to buy them or, 3D print them yourself, which is even better. And then there's the other part of wargaming, the rule sets. Rules of today are indeed very different from the rules of the old days. Today's rules are generally more streamlined in many situations. Design language has changed and evolved. Taking fewer steps to reach the same goal, like, did my miniature beat that other miniature over there? It's something that you can see writ large in pretty much every other newer rule set out there. Rolling a die to see if you can then roll another die, to see if you can then roll another die, just to see your opponent roll a die and make a saving throw, that's kind of generally a thing of the past. Again, the indie space is generally the more interesting place in rule sets these days. The good old days had mostly very dense rules and thick books, and also, fewer rule sets and books overall to choose from. But now, with the indie and mid-sized wargame explosion and the ease of finding and acquiring said wargames, a player is spoiled for choice. You can find dense and crunchy rules if you want to, narrative wargames that kind of split the difference between wargames and role-playing games, games that are frankly kind of hard to define, and games that are familiar but far more accessible. In my humble opinion, now is the golden age of wargaming. There's never been more models to choose from. There's never been more rule sets to choose from. And there's never been more players. Every gaming convention that I go to does bigger and bigger numbers than the year previously. Adepticon, Las Vegas Open, Nova Open, heck, even Gen Con, where technically I am right now as of the published date of this video. Gen Con is generally known as an RPG and board gaming convention, but even Gen Con is seeing wargaming representation grow there year after year. But again, now, being the golden age of wargaming, is my opinion. And the great thing about tabletop wargaming is that no game ever really dies. So if the golden age of wargaming to you was Mordheim, then you can still play it. A lot of people out there do. Or you can stick to 3rd edition 40K or 5th edition 40K or whatever edition of whatever was your favorite. You can probably find old metal models that have all the character that you enjoy on eBay. Or, you could just do some searches for metal miniatures on Google and find what you're looking for. I really do think that now is the golden age of wargaming because of all the new things that we have access to, but also because of all the old things that we have access to as well. You and your like-minded friends can play whatever you want, whether it's new or old, and enjoy your own personal golden age of wargaming. Do you agree with me? Now is the golden age, or do you think I'm totally off base? Let me know down in the comments below. And again, while you're down there, you could begin the golden age of depressmentation of the like button. By hitting the like button is how you would do that. It does really help the channel and everything like that. And if you want to see more videos like this every single Friday, you can hit the subscribe button while you're down there as well. It's free. Thanks for watching.